progress.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Petaluma regular meeting of the City Council and the Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency. Tonight we're having a workshop to discuss the work and recommendations of the Ad Hoc Community Advisory Committee, and this is Monday, December 13th. And before we call roll, I would like to have our translator, Martin Rivarola, announce the translation for those in our audience who speak Spanish.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Tengan todos ustedes muy buenas noches. Mi nombre es Martín Rivarola, voy a ser el traductor en el taller de esta noche, en la sesión de esta noche, para escuchar en el canal en español todo lo que usted necesita hacer. Es donde dice Interpretation, que es un botoncito que va a tener en su monitor. Usted aprieta ahí y donde le pide español, selecciona y ahí va a poder escuchar toda la conversación en español. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we will have the Deputy City Clerk do the roll call.
Barrett.
Here.
Barnacle.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
King.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
And Posake.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you very much. And you can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we will go to our workshop. And this is the Ad Hoc Committee report out. And we're going to start with our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, council, staff, the community. I want to recognize that we have been on this path for over a year now with the community, with our ad hoc members, with our staff who have worked cross-departmentally on this significant effort. Our city is forever changed after the murder of George Floyd, and we are a city and an organization that is forever changed as we go on this path for diversity, equity, and inclusion, not only within the city as an organization, but in the policies and the practices that we have as a city that are external facing and affect our community. So with that said, I want to recognize the work of Tracy Webb. She has been with us throughout, helping us facilitate and work closely with both city staff and the community to work through these recommendations. And just really want to thank you, Tracy, for all of your work and all of your advice and guidance. And I am going to turn this over to you, but just want to recognize how appreciative we are of your work.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to all the council members and to all of the city department heads and managers who really helped do the heavy lifting on this project. This was a lot of work, but it was worth every ounce of energy, or erg of energy, however we want to quantify it, that we put into this. So, and certainly, maybe even the most important focal point is the community and the ad hoc members who gave so much of their time and effort and demonstrated tremendous perseverance getting through this process. I mentioned to Peggy, to the manager, when we first started this work, that it's bumpy, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it requires courage, and it requires, as there's a spiritual, keep your eye on the sparrow, right? You've got to keep your eye on the North Star. What is the goal here? And the goal is to make, the goal of DEI, of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, is to make all of us feel safe and included in our communities, in our organizations. And hopefully we are on a path in Petaluma to make those who have felt, I have a new term, otherized, as it were, feel more included, or at least feel that they have a voice and know that the city wants to hear from them and wants to be a better place. So if we might just start with the slides, Aaron, that would be grateful, please. And Martine, say something or whatever, or get someone's attention if I'm going too fast. You know, I talk very fast. Thank you.
Let me share my screen.
Oh, it's Ingrid. Okay. I wasn't sure who was the wizard behind the curtain. Okay, great. All right, we can go to the next one, please. All right, thank you. So just so some context here, I want to talk about the breakdown of this presentation. So the first is the work. We'll review the committee's processes and feedback. Moving forward, key principle and process considerations, and then finally recommendations, feedback from the council and the community. And let's go forward. So our guiding principles on the ad hoc committee: safe self-expression, inclusiveness and equity, easy participation and equal access, meaningful engagement and accountability. And the safe expression is that we wanted people to feel that they had a place to feel that they could say what they wanted to. Now, as most of you know by now, my firm does diversity, equity, inclusion work. We also do organization change work and a lot of corporate organizational transition work, executive coaching. No one is ever going to bring their full selves. You just can't do that to an organization. I mean, if you're having a bad day, you can't snap at people like you may be able to a little bit at home, right? So you do temper what you say. But we wanted to try to create an environment where people could express what they felt. And in some cases, they didn't feel comfortable and they would reach out to me directly. Inclusiveness and equity, we wanted to hear from everyone. Easy participation and equal access. That really relates to translation, and Martine and his team have been wonderful with that. And meaningful engagement. We wanted to have dialogue. I think it took us a bit to get there, and we'll talk through that, but I think we did move toward that. And accountability. The accountability comes from the committee embodying the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it also now turns to the city to implement those recommendations or some version of those recommendations that after the staff now gives their input on the feasibility and the impact of whatever the path the council wants to go down, that work is really put into, in place here. So let's go forward, please. I tend to go at a rapid pace because really what I want to do is get to the meat of this and then get to the council so you all can have your conversation. So context and background. The work began in September of 2020, and it was rooted in the killings of Black and brown people, George Floyd and all the others. It follows the mayor's pledge, the city's town hall, and the community listening sessions, all which were very, very informative. And before I even began to design any of this work, I read through all of that. Why? What's the why of this work? Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, has a great video. If you look him up on on the TED Talks, it's about leadership, and I call it the 5 whys. It's the work matters not because of what you do or how you do it, but why you do it. That's the connection that people make that helps them become involved with the work and care about it. The why of this work is to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the city because it will enable the town to become more innovative, inviting, safe, and allow it to thrive. This is really, really important. You can't, one-dimensional anything does not produce the best results. So the goal is to have as many voices or as many, different types of threads going into the loom so that the cloth that is produced is beautiful and diverse and it's strong. So this is why we're doing this work. Representation matters. If there are not more BIPOC, Asian, Latinx, LGBTQ++ employed and appointed by the city, then how can people from these groups feel that they're accurately and fairly represented? And quite frankly, they can't. Next, please. So there's two concepts. Well, there are many concepts in DEI, but two that I would like people to remember. Unconscious bias. Bias matters. We all have biases. learned where yours lie, and work hard to eradicate the bias. Change starts with individuals. There is a link. If you look at I think it's called I don't have the link in front of me, but I'm doing some work with the city leadership, and I'm having them take the tests. There are bias tests. I think it's called implicit assumptions test, and it sits at Harvard. The institute sits at Harvard, and there's all kinds of tests on gender bias, race bias, skin tone bias, sexual preference bias, age bias that you can take. They take about 10 to 12 minutes, and you get your score immediately. I really recommend that everyone take some time and take these tests. Equity, not just equality. It's not about preference. It's about righting a ship with appropriate ballast that has been allowed to list to one side for too long. It is about righting that ship. Next slide, please. So in the very beginning, I asked the group, which had 28 members when we started, to define success. And some of those, the ones that bubbled up most, if we would do a frequency diagram, were measurable change, increased trust and communication, all voices heard, and all feeling safe to speak up. Did we meet all of those? Well, the measurable change, now that's where we are now, where we have to decide which path we're going down or which paths we're going down, and put SMART goals in place to measure that success, to see if we are moving forward. Increased trust and communication. I think by the last meeting, people really spoke from their hearts, and we got to the why of this work. The homework. This is a significant part of the work and the record. I mentioned to the council in the beginning that an ideal group for something like this is about 12 to 14. Well, we had double that, and I understood why. There were a lot of voices that we wanted to include. But in a virtual setting, or even in an in-person setting, but particularly in a virtual setting, it is difficult for everyone to have, a spontaneous chance to talk. So what we did was we started, I think after 2 or 3 meetings, asking people if they'd like to submit homework that then I could use to sort of begin to populate a very basic outline of people's ideas about the particular topic. And then we allowed each person to speak 2 or 3 minutes, depending on what we were working on, to share their ideas. But I had asked the council, and I'm sure that all of you read it, to go through the homework, because there's so much detail in there and so much good thought. So as we proceed and the council picks those initiatives, which will be the first ones or the ones that they pursue, I would suggest even using that homework again that relates to those the chosen paths as a form of edification, because there's very good information, and the committee really put hard work into this. Shared ideas. Participants shared ideas, as I mentioned, 2 or 3 minutes. We had screens up that were populated by the ideas. In some cases, we coalesced and grouped things together. And then they voted, basically multi-voted, to allocate votes and identify key ideas. Next, please. So the SMART goals that we used were which was the sieve through which we passed the ideas. They should be specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. So in most cases, there is some sort of a time boundary, but what I would ask, or what I would suggest, is that the council use this metric, to check the progress as you move forward on whatever goals that the council selects at the end of this session. Next, please. So the first topic was police and the community. And the ideas that received the highest votes were established independent, adequately funded, empowered civilian/community, not city staff, police oversight body. The purpose, membership, charter, standing, authority, all decided by the end of this year. Well, that's probably not going to happen, but that was the goal, and fully populate by March 2022. Now, I will say, I became ill on an emergency basis, and we missed the September meeting, so we had to move it to October. So I apologize for that, but I don't know, perhaps if I hadn't missed that September meeting, we might have been able to to implement something by the end of the year, but I don't think it's going to be possible at this point. Committee to identify ways to increase dialogue, build relationships, humanize police, community, and embrace restorative justice. Restorative justice came up over and over again. Education, engagement, dialogue to build relationships, humanize police and community members. The committee is to review and recommend ongoing police training regarding DEI, anti-bias, de-escalation, and use of weapons. All right, next one, please. Diversity in schools was another topic. Now, understanding, of course, that, and the committee understood that the city doesn't have, quote unquote, jurisdiction, if you will, over the various school districts, but they're a critical part of the community. And this is about working closely with the school districts. Review hiring practices to ensure the recruitment of a more diverse workforce, ethnically, racially, culturally, and linguistically. City Council should use the pandemic relief funds and partner with our schools in order to confront disparities that students and their parents contend with in Petaluma. So you see, there is a connection. Even though the city may not and probably wouldn't want to tell the schools what to do, there's definitely a connection, because if the city can do something to raise equity in the city, to confront the disparities, you have better prepared students and more active parents. The new Permanent Commission on Race Relations and Public Safety, which is a suggestion, should engage school administrations, parents, community groups, and local agencies to identify successes and gaps in DEI initiatives for staffing and hiring. The commission should recommend a citywide standard to create an enduring model for Petaluma. So this was a suggestion of a new permanent commission. All Petaluma public schools would provide multiple site-based school-wide assemblies that recognize Diversity Heritage Month, and revisit the $8.3 million spending proposal and redirect some of the city hall renovations to help increase diversity awareness and visibility in our schools. Okay, next slide, please. Multicultural Center Restorative Justice. Creation of a multicultural center by investing in the Lucchese Center and the Phoenix Theater, Measure U funds for the infrastructure piece, pandemic relief funds to invest in organizations and multicultural events held at the venues. In partnering with all Petaluma public and private, schools, the Petaluma Multicultural Community Center shall create and promote social awareness, diversity education, and provide support for services for the students of Petaluma. A committee of 7 residents shall be appointed to oversee and evaluate the multicultural aspects of the center and to integrate and expand restorative justice program. So once again, restorative justice it comes up again, and it could be housed here. The space, physical or virtual, should have a design that focuses on healing trauma of historically excluded and marginalized communities, fostering community engagement, constructive collaboration, and effective communication regarding the needs and concerns of all community members. This is this notion of a multicultural center. I want to emphasize that. I know that hopefully some of the committee members will be speaking during public comment, but I think it's safe to say that this is not just viewed as just a casual drop-in place that, oh, you have some nice pictures or some artwork of different cultures. No, this is a place. Place has meaning, and it's a place that can become the symbol of this work, or at least one symbol of it. So it is not just a nice little place where you go and try food from different cultures, but where you have real conversation and real multicultural and multidimensional connection. Let's go to the next slide, please. Diversity in city hiring and appointments. So this is all about the city, because the city represents the community in many ways, right? So there's this site, https://ideal.com diversity/hiring or similar for hiring ideas. Retain a consultant focused on DEI recruiting and hiring. Retain diverse staffing companies that put forth diverse candidates. Remove language barriers. Equal access ordinance modeled after San Francisco and Oakland. Establish Office of Equity led by the Director of Equity and Inclusion. Recruitment process that values merit and offers a fair assessment of all candidates. continuous anti-racism and bias training for city departments, especially for hiring committees, and data report on diversity in all committees, commissions, board, and city employees. Hire equity first consultants, Sonoma County, to help navigate DEI. I do want to say that I know personally that the city is doing a number of these already initiatives. So for example, once we concluded with the ad hoc meetings, I have been working with the city leadership on anti-bias training. It's a total audience, I think, of about a little over north of 50 people. And we'll continue that throughout all the employees, I do believe. All right, let's go forward, please. List all job openings with at least 50 LGBTQ++ and people of color groups. So they're out there. I remember a client told me, several years ago, this was a major Fortune 100 on the peninsula. We just can't find qualified candidates of color. Well, after I got over my stroke and Stanford revived me, I said, you know what? I really didn't have a stroke, but I thought I would. Stanford is right down the street. What are you talking about? Well, we need really well-educated elite candidates. And I'm pulling my hair out at this point. And this is an EVP I was talking to. And so we ended up, he said, well, I never thought about that, and I'm going, duh, right? But we ended up doing a job fair, and it went everywhere from postdocs to undergrads for internships, and it was extremely successful. The candidates are there. We can't find them. Ask people to help you find them. Reach out to colleges and high schools to create a pipeline of diverse candidates in and out of Sonoma County and include internships. Mentoring for high school seniors from underrepresented groups. Make sure interns are supported and mentored. Provide housing assistance to help defray the high costs in Petaluma. More diverse hiring panels. And this is really important. The city, I believe, has a new director of HR, and I've met her, and she's very dedicated to this work. And I know that she has resources on how to create and make sure that there is diversity in these panels, and that candidates that are of diverse backgrounds are not being screened out unfairly or through unconscious bias or out now bias. Look at structural inequities in the city of Petaluma. Consultant to review retention strategies for diverse employees, set DEI metrics, and assess periodically a referral program directed toward current diverse employees. Okay, next, please. So the heavy lifting, thorough staff work is still needed to respond to the recommendations that the council decides will be the path forward, because budget and feasibility. And the results of this staff, I won't say vetting, but analysis will be transparent. Identify a transparent forum to continue dialogue regarding the prioritized recommendations and staff research. It has to be a community-city partnership for implementation. The worst thing that can happen is that the council tonight says, well, we're going to focus on these 3 or 5 priorities. I'm going to be a little directive here and say that with DEI work, if you pick too many, it dilutes the efficacy. So you really want to pick 3 to 5 and do them well. And, I'm suggesting perhaps guidance from a 3-member council subcommittee. But you have to continue, because if you do something like that, you can still invite in the community to speak and whatnot, because it's critical that the community stay involved with this process. And the consideration are, this work can be triggering for those that have experienced my new word, otherism. Don't expect those of us who are other than white male to be comfortable explaining things all the time. It can be hurtful. It can foment anger. It can foment people stepping back and stepping away because they don't want to be out there. Limit political theater. This work is too important. People's lives are at stake. They really are, as we saw with these murders. But even though that hasn't necessarily happened in Petaluma, I say limit political theater on both sides, because this is about having dialogue and really moving forward. We had in our last meeting, as I mentioned, I think some real dialogue. We had one of the superintendents who's of color, a Black woman, say that she felt dehumanized by the community. and by the way they were treating her, which was very different than what her other people of color colleagues experienced. And so finally, SMART goals should lead. We need to have a rubric, some methodology for tracking these ideas. So next slide, please. So the 4 words that I'd like to leave with you, I'll be here throughout your conversation, but are tenacity. This work requires tenacity. Never let go of your fight to be better, no matter how hard it gets. And perspective, view things from a perspective different than your own. One of my clients, I think she calls it vujade, which instead of deja vu, it's seeing things differently, even when you've been in that situation before. Try to connect with the other person's why. Instead of if somebody tells you that something felt racist or sexist or that it was discriminating against their sexual orientation, or don't just bat that down and say, well, I didn't mean it. I'm not a racist. No. You just dehumanized them and basically eradicated their statement. So instead, the best question is, either I'm sorry, do you mind telling me more? And then shut up and listen. Pardon me for being so direct, but that's what this work is about. Not putting yourself front and center, but the other person. And hope for a better tomorrow. All of you can make Petaluma better together, but not one of you, including not one of the community members, can do it alone. Thank you. Next slide. And for the council discussion, I'd like to offer 3 or 4 things here. One is the Pareto rule. As I said, we can't boil the ocean. So what will have the greatest impact, the 20% that will have the impact to 80% of the results. Consider 1 recommendation from each category, and consider equity, which will increase equity. What will increase equity in Petaluma the most? Okay, so what are the top priorities? Next slide. So things to consider are prioritization, community participation, transparency, and as I mentioned, a 3-member council subcommittee. So as you move forward through this conversation, let's keep these 4 concepts in mind. Thank you. And the next, please.
That's it.
All right. So I would like to turn it over to Mayor Barrett to lead the conversation. I will be here should any questions arise or you need any clarification.
Well, thank you very much. That was actually very complete, but it was also really fast. So, I actually had a couple questions while you were going, which I think you did answer, but I want to be certain that we're all on the same page. At one point you said that in order to really have any impact, we should pick 3 to 5 issues, I think is the word you used. And then, and I was asking at that point in my notes, describe what those issues would be. But then just on the end, when you were summing up, you said you want to do something that has the greatest impact, and you're recommending 1 recommendation from each of those 3 categories that you went through. Are those the issues that you were talking about?
Let's say the topics, the recommendations, let's call them what they are. I should call them what they are, recommendations. So each of although they're not in bullet format, each of the items that was listed were recommendations that the committee put forth under that category.
Right.
So what I'm suggesting is 1, maybe 2, the council pick 1, maybe 2 from each of the categories and move forward, with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sort of does, but gosh, some of them you just feel like, well, do we really not going to do that one? But because there's 2 in that group, or maybe 3. And well, we'll see. We'll see how the conversation goes forward. But yeah, and I think that's going to be part of our work tonight. So okay. So thank you. I see Councilmember Fisher has her hand up. So please go ahead.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wanted to hear from Peggy if I can. I know that you have been implementing all sorts of programs at the city already, and Tracy talked about some of the work that she's doing. I'm wondering if you can just outline for us sort of your framework and what has been put in place already.
Thank you, Councilmember Fisher. As Tracy had mentioned, we are doing training both for our directors and our leadership team, which we will be taking citywide. And we've been doing that over the last, I want to say, 2 months. So that's kind of some internal training that we'll be doing, and we're working with our new HR director to start to create this training matrix for the next year of what that looks like. So that's our training piece. And then we're also, with all the recruitments that we are starting to do, is looking at where we are promoting those positions, looking at different ways of interviewing and fortifying those panels, who we have on our panels. And we're also talking in active conversation with our HR team about retention. Now, how do we create a culture here in the organization that retains those diverse candidates once we're successful in attracting them? So we are also doing that with our training. A matter of fact, we have a separate session for our BIPOC staff coming up on the training to provide a safe space for our staff, separate from the larger group. So we're doing a lot, but we're really teeing it up, and it's really based upon getting our new HR director up and running, but we're teeing up a lot.
Great. I look forward to meeting that person. And then another question I had also of you, Peggy, is do we have the baseline data that we need at the city to know on our commissions and our council and our staff who we are? So we know if we're improving.
Some base data. Yes, we do. Race, gender. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for asking that question, Councilmember Fisher. But it does, just as I'm looking at the diversity in city hiring list of bulleted items, I was trying to check them off as Peggy was speaking, and it might be more efficient if someone on staff checked them off and let us know, because if we're looking at ones if things have already started, it would be interesting to see or hear, where we want to concentrate, or, I'm just a little unclear about, the format that Tracy has asked us to do. If things have already been started, are we going to count those? Or we don't want to just pick something when you're already working on other things.
So, Mayor, I actually said this during this topic. This was our last meeting of the ad hoc when this topic was discussed. Yeah. And I kind of broke rank. I think I did that to Tracy before we went out. I just said, I liked all the recommendations, and I felt very strongly as an organization that, and the ad hoc actually felt very strongly about recommending all of them rather than sticking to the top 3 to 5. So, as I'm going through this list right now, there are many things, even bringing on consultant help to help us start to create those baselines, so we know where we are and where we want to get to. So I kind of want to say on this page, on this diversity and hiring, that this would be, that we come back when we're doing our goals and priorities and start to tee up and talk about timelines for some of these. But like I said, some of these are already underway, like the training for city staff. That's already underway.
Okay, so this just for the public to know, since this is a workshop, there will be much more of a conversational approach here, where staff and the council will be going back and forth. And at the end of our discussion, we will open up for general public comment. which is our typical workshop format. So with that, I would like to go back to our city manager and say that I think what you just said in response to Councilmember Fisher's question, I think is really good and actually pretty impressive that you guys have been able to jump on this so quickly. But I guess what I would like to see when we do come back for goals and policy in the beginning of next year is to look at how are these steps that the city is taking in hiring and DEI training and more diverse hiring panels. How is that working? I don't know if there's one panel. I don't think the hiring panel is one unit. I don't think the one hiring panel does fire department hirings. I don't think it does police hiring. So how does it work in different departments? I think that's really important to know because I do think a lot of the focus of this group was about community relations and policing. And while we want our whole city staff to represent our whole community, we want that to be done throughout the departments.
That's correct.
Okay, so.
I was going to suggest starting with the police department.
Well, I guess you start wherever you can, but we have to be at every department and we have to see how is it going to look in those different departments.
Well, it's for every, I'm going to jump in, it's for every position. I'm just going to be really clear about that. When we are doing panels for positions, we actually spend a lot of time. It's not just an internal panel. We want to make sure that we are populating it with folks from outside, from the community. We did that with our climate action manager, really try to include a lot of different perspectives because it makes for a better interview and it makes for better decision making. So.
Okay, and in light of what Tracy was talking about transparency, I think it's incredibly important for that information to also make it back to the community who perhaps weren't on that committee, but are interested in how that committee was chosen and made up. And so that information, I think helps inform the community of what is actually happening and the methods by which it's happening in the city hiring. Which I think people are interested in, but they just don't know. They wouldn't have any idea how that's happening unless we actually inform them. So if that means putting it on our website or putting an article in the newspaper, putting it on our social media pages, however we do that, or however many ways we need to do that, I think that that's really important.
Thank you.
So we obviously have started with diversity in City Hall or city hiring. Before I go back to you, Councilmember Fisher, I'm going to take other people and then I'll swing back with you. Councilmember King and then Councilmember Healy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think before I get into any specific comments, I just wanted to thank Tracy Webb for the excellent work and report. I felt that it was very clear what was being presented to us and what is expected of us in terms of direction. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate the directness. And I personally appreciate the fast part of the presentation. We've had a lot of slow presentations over the years. And I think we can pick these things up pretty quickly, especially if we've read the report in advance. I also wanted to thank the ad hoc committee for all the time and good work and hard work and effort that they put in. The report to me is, very direct and meaningful, and looking at it, and I'll get into some more specifics, I think there's a lot that we can do here that's in the report. And I'll start with the diversity and city hiring. I'm a little unclear about how much we can recommend. But one thing I was going to suggest with respect to the limitations or expansion of this is that retaining a consultant on DEI recruiting and hiring would seem to be a step to not only advance diversity in city hiring, but be able to implement things such as listing all job openings with at least 50 LQBT, excuse me, I'm looking at my writing, LQBTQ++ and POC groups with colleges. That seems to be something that that person would move forward on. And there's a number of these other items here that I think are important as well, that aren't not necessarily being done right now by the city, but can be done. So if you're asking for a priority under that heading, to me, that would be the thing, because that gives us a person who's going to be on this issue all the time, coming forward with policies for the city to pursue internally, policies for the council to decide and work for. So that would be that. And I think if you're picking out of the 4 categories, they're all important. It's hard to say, well, this is more important than that. But city hiring, I think, to me, is at the top of the list, and in that these are really good jobs. They pay well, they have great benefits. In most cases, they have pensions that are good and generous in my view, and it would provide opportunities for people that may not be getting those opportunities elsewhere, and should be getting those. I also think, on a more selfish note, that the broader your pool of people to choose from, under all circumstances, is going to improve the quality of the work and the people that come in to do the work. And this is throughout all departments. I'm not just talking about any one particular department. So those are my comments on diversity in city hiring. I don't know if you want us to go through each of these items all together at once, or you want to take one at a time. It's up to you, Mayor.
Yeah, I think if you have things to say on all of them, let's just put it all out there and see what we can distill.
Okay.
Because otherwise there may be some fatigue setting in and something may be unnecessarily shortchanged.
Okay. Well, I'll continue on. I was prepared. I mean, my big question is on some of this is, some of this is going to require money. When do we budget? What the timing? What do we have and what do we don't have? And that's not, obviously here tonight. But I didn't see anything in there that caused me to step back and say we either shouldn't do this or couldn't do this. And the only restriction I can see potentially is finance. So I'll just take them in the remaining order. The police and the community. I think establishing some type of commission or committee makes sense. I think we would need, as a council, to establish some parameters on eligibility. I know the ad hoc committee, we didn't require applications. It was different from our normal procedure, but I think establishing a commission similar to our other commissions and committees is appropriate. I also think that would tend to permit a group of citizens in this case, as opposed to the consultant, to examine all the issues that are contained within that subpart. I don't know about getting it populated by March because of the timing of city staff. That might be a little early by city speed standards, but sooner rather than later. One of my comments there was a desire not to have a staff person on the commission, but I would think that having a staff person and perhaps even the consultant on equity be a staff liaison would make a lot more sense. Being on these committees and commissions as a liaison and actually prior to being on council, it it was always helpful to have someone from the city staff to have the reports, to be able to report back to the city manager or whoever on what needs to be done going forward. So I am supportive of that. The increased diversity in schools, I certainly agree with that. I think that would need to come back to us in some practical fashion, given that we don't have any jurisdiction over the schools as a city council, but we can certainly work with the school district in some way. I know one of the members of the school board was on the ad hoc committee, at least one. And I think that's feasible. And that may take more time to put that together because we do need the cooperation of a governmental entity that that we don't have control over. So that may be something we do after the first two things I mentioned. And then the creation of the Multicultural Center certainly sounds like something that's feasible. Again, we need to look at the finances and the specifics, but I think having the staff come back with some type of report on that makes some sense. I know that didn't narrow much down. I really kind of narrowed only really the one with respect to the schools. If we're going to go back around with, you've got to make a decision, I would go with the hiring. If we're going to something first, that would be it. And I would support hiring a diversity consultant to move that along. So I'll stop here and kind of hold my comments for a moment, unless anybody can.
Okay, thank you. And just to jump in on the schools, it's not just the school district. There are several school districts.
Right.
And many of them were represented on this ad hoc. And so it is something that would take a bit of coordination. And I do agree that one is a little thornier than the other ones because the other ones are actually within our jurisdiction alone. And so I'm going to tend to agree with you on that one. We're going to go to Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I agree with most, if not all, of what Councilmember King just said. I think with respect to the schools, there needs to be a lot more outreach than has been done so far. We're talking all the various feeder elementary districts. We're talking the private schools. We're talking the charter schools, and this joint union school district has not always responded positively in the distant past when the city tried to tell it what to do. I can just tell you that from experience. But I think this is a very thoughtful list of proposals. I want to thank Tracy, and I want to thank all the members of the ad hoc for doing an incredible amount of work. I'm not really prepared to prioritize among these things until we get price tags associated with the different things. And I'm looking forward to getting that from staff. I think that will very much inform what we can move forward with. But I think there are a lot of great ideas here. I would say that I would be leery of a 3-member council subcommittee unless the agreement was that would be subject to all Brown Act disclosures, because I think that's kind of perceived in the community as a way of proceeding under the radar. And that's the last thing we want to be doing here. But there are some very well thought out proposals here, and I look forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. Yeah, and I too want to thank the committee. They to stick with it this long and to put in homework on it and invest themselves in it is a huge help to the community. So thanks to those who participated and stuck it through to this point. I think Councilman King teed this up nicely for how to look at this. I too look at the hiring practices as the first place to go. And so much of that is good leading business practice now that I see us attacking and and supporting staff on attacking all these items. And I think the key thing would be to have a metric and a report out, like in the first quarter of each year, there's a council item showing progress and identifying what's going on. And that way it's transparent to the public what's going on. You have your year-over-year progress that you can report out. And I think there's things that the public may not recognize. Like all city employees take a variety of training that are required by state law to require certain trainings, harassment trainings, things like that, as are all elected officials. Kind of the reason it's an annual task is because hearts and minds don't change instantly. And if that message needs to be, the training message needs to be got out, it needs to be got out frequently, repetitively, so it becomes the new baseline that, where we want our community to be, where legally we've agreed we should be. And so I think tackling the hiring issues first is a big first step. I do have some other rather specific questions from the committee. Where do they hope this action will place us around around Sonoma County? Everybody's taken their own individual steps, but I know Petaluma led in getting cahoots in place prior to any other city. And is this put us ahead of all or right in the pack? And what would the committee's goal to be? To be in the pack or to lead strongly? May I make that as a question to Tracy?
Can you be specific about what committee you're talking about?
Yeah, ad hoc.
Okay.
Committee's input for the report this evening, the recommendations, where will that stand us, or what is their hope for where that will stand us?
Madam Mayor, may I answer? Okay, thank you. I'm being measured in my response because I have a lot of feeling around this. The committee wants something done. Okay, they didn't spend all of this time. And if you read through that homework, which I know you all have because I've received some questions, it's very detailed. In some cases, they're blueprints, right, for a path of action. I would say they'd want Petaluma to lead the pack. It is not okay to be in the middle or in the beginning. All this energy and time and money from the city, not, my fee, but more importantly, all of the city staff, all the time that went into this, because this was a mutual heavy lifting, including the committee members. They want to see they want to see Petaluma lead Sonoma County and lead the Bay Area in this work. This is where they live and work, and they want it to be better. So, I would ask the council, yes, I'm a business person. You have to look at the cost. You have to wait. You have a city to run, right? But really, the why of this is find a meaningful path forward that resonates, right? That will put Petaluma at the front of the pack. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, and I'll try not to get onto one either. I think it's important that we recognize this, that what we're doing is leading, and what we're doing is trying to make huge changes, which is difficult. And yet the work, this is the longest running effort in the county, to try and reach resolution and to try and come up with tangible, implementable actions. So I think the committee's work is hugely appreciated from that perspective alone. But I did want that in the record that we're leading strongly. Then also, I did have a specific question about restorative justice. This is kind of going in the weeds. I know what I think it means. Can you synopsize what you think the committee's hopes were for what it might mean?
So, and I don't want to talk down to anybody when I explain this definition, but I think we have to sort of start at the beginning. And it means, if you look it up on Google, right, there's 20,000 different definitions of it. But at its core, it means that you bring together the perpetrator, and Chief Savano, I don't get upset, I'm going to use language but the perpetrator of the action right? Of the perceived or real aggression, and the I don't like to say victim, the recipient of that, ism, whatever it is, racism, sexism, and you have a very facilitated conversation to try to bring those two people together and to really try to give justice to the person who was aggrieved. And so there's a process, and there's a number of different methodologies. There's a couple of people in Petaluma. Luz Wire is one who's very well trained in this. And it is about really putting the person who was injured at the center and helping them process to some closure by dealing with the issue and the person that caused the injury. Does that make sense? It's a very general definition, but that's what it boils down.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on the Google definition, the implementation in some of our schools and other actions that we have.
Right.
I'm just wondering, did the committee delve in a little deeper in the actionable things that bringing restorative justice as a structure, did they?
Yeah.
Beyond the definition.
You're right. So the two areas, well, it came up in the Multicultural Center, right? But that was more of a place to house it. But it really came up in the police in the community topic. And also, when we were talking about diversity in schools, because I know it's used a lot in the schools now, and it's doing some good. So there was a lot of energy around it in that area, as well as with the police and the community. And I do believe the police department is already using some elements of restorative justice, and Chief Stefano can speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. We are in the juvenile setting with Mentor Me, but not currently in the adult setting, if you will, and we respond to incidents.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just looking for a little specific there, and I appreciate that. And then on another area, on a cultural and an effort on the center, I see the city as a great part. But partner with assets who can come to the table. But a lot of good that comes from groups that set up come from the inertia of the leadership of the group. Often, like the 501c3 that you mentioned in there, when groups have strong leaderships, they really grow and do great things. And I'm kind of hoping that there'll be a synergy of a citizen groundswell to be that 501c3, to which then would be a partner to the agency, which has resources and assets and things. So there's so much citizen participation needed there.
Absolutely, and I don't think there'd be any lack of that, council member. There was a lot of energy around this, a lot. As long as, like I said, it's not just a place to sing Kumbaya, right? Where real conversations are had, where you read books like White Fragility and talk about them, or How to Be an Anti-Racist and talk about them. It could be a center that houses the restorative justice program, as we talked about.
Right, and hitting on the theme of the movies, that would be a great place for the movies. I'm more of a moviegoer than a book goer, but there's Indie Lens pop-up series that has a great list of culturally relevant movies. It's associated. They're free movies held at theaters, and they're always accompanied by panels of speakers on the topic. I'll leave it at that. But if we could get our theater, which when it was built, promised a social connection to turn those rooms over for this kind of programming, I think we'd really hit on something. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilmember Posake, followed by the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to thank everyone involved in producing this report and these recommendations. I think that This is very important. I think that we can't possibly do too much for our communities of color relative to the injustice they've all endured for many years. I've tried hard to talk to folks as well as read all the homework for the group, and I think that what I hear that people want is the number one item, and also want to be acted on quickly, is civilian oversight of the police department. I think that this is something we need to begin addressing tonight. I don't know what is the best way to pursue it, whether it's through a consultant, through a city council resolution, through extending a subgroup of the ad hoc committee to study and decide on a form for such a commission. But I don't want to belabor this point, but I think that it is going to be important. And again, this is not just my idea, but what I've heard from talks with folks is that it should be insulated from city staff for the most part. I think that one thing that needs to be clear in choosing this commission, and which I also hear from the folks that are interested in it, is that it won't be there just to be critical of our police department, but it will be trying to engage both the police department and the community in finding ways to make community or to make to have these communities intersect more, let's say. I think that's all I want to say at this time, but I wanted to get that out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Barnacle, followed again by Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm gonna stick to the diversity and hiring for the time being, just so I don't speak for, like, run my voice out with comments and questions. Tracy, I have one initial question that I just want to get some visuals on. And you talked about limiting political theater, and I'm wondering if you can give examples of what you view as political theater, just so that I have a, to me, this whole thing is political, right? Where we're at, right? It's politics. So what do you mean by political theater?
So let's say theater then. Okay. What I mean is theatrics. And by that, I mean using these forums as I'm not talking about the council, I'm talking about anybody that's doing this work, whether you're in person or in Zoom, using them as a forum to make pat statements, to put slogans forward versus having as much dialogue as possible. So what I'm encouraging is that, people speak from their heart, right? And really try and think through before you speak, what can we present that's actionable and that's something that we can bat around, and it's not simply just this political slogan or that political slogan, whatever, this group's point of view, but it's how do we connect? And so look for the connection versus the slogans, if that makes sense. That's the best explanation I can give you for it at this point.
Appreciate that. No, thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so on the diversity and hiring pieces of this, I love the idea of listing it on, that seems like a no-brainer, is listing it on various different sites. We're trying to hire several people right now as a follow-on of Measure U, so it does seem like finding a recruiting consultant that specializes in hiring diverse candidates seems like sort of a no-brainer if we're not already doing that. So the next place that I jump to is that, like, while I'm sure we have some base data on the race and ethnicity and gender of our committees, commissions, city staff, I don't think we have the type of analysis that would look at things like upward mobility trends for our diverse staff going backwards, pay scales and equal pay, turnover, and those are the types of things. So for me, my first step is to probably create an ad hoc that includes members of the community and members of the council to look at creating metrics so that we know what we're actually measuring. Because I really there's my wheels are spinning, but I'm having trouble really bounding it down to what are we measuring and what data do we need to capture to do that going forward. So one of my priorities would be to actually define what we want to measure. The school showed up in a couple of different places, but I absolutely support doing more outreach to both the high schools and the junior college. I remember I didn't even learn about planning until my second year at the JC. And when I realized that there was this profession that had social and environmental and political and all these economic development facets, it was inspiring to me. I got my degree in planning, and then I graduated at the recession and there was no jobs in it, but it's still a great profession, to Councilmember King's point. And I think that, that's just one type of career that could be had in city government. So I think there's a lot of great outreach that can be done there. Can someone speak to what's an equal access ordinance? How much time do we think it would take to create one, and what we think it would, what the impact would be?
So Vice Mayor, tonight, we don't have details on most of these items. We wanted council kind of to look at them and express what their priorities were, and we were going to come back. I know that one of our ad hoc members was very involved. Pedro Toledo was very involved in developing them, I believe, either in San Francisco or Oakland. So I would definitely be reaching out to him and learning more about that.
Peggy, if I may, and Mayor and Council, I can address that just a little bit, because we tried to do some preliminary looks at as much as we could of what the committee was discussing and recommending. So from what I've seen from limited research, those are language access regulations. And the samples I saw in San Francisco and Oakland had to do with looking at their linguistic demographics, the population of speakers they had of various languages. And then for those that meet a specified threshold, the ordinances address providing access in the way of materials and communications for those speakers. So whether it's recruiting, legislative materials, web information, translation, things like that. And so there are some good examples of those regulations. And from what I've seen, they're tailored to a community's demographics. So they still make sense from a resource standpoint and are serving the purpose of providing greater access to participation with local government and local government programs and services.
Great, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And then I think the final one that was really distinguished in the hiring or the diversity in city hiring and appointments was creating the Office of Equity. And I'm not necessarily opposed to it. I guess I feel like before we say let's prioritize that, my sense is to have, again, I like the idea of having maybe a few members from, the members of the ad hoc, a few members from the ad hoc who were supportive of the idea and had a strong vision for, what the charter of that department would be, how it would function relative to the other departments, and maybe a few, obviously the city manager and maybe a couple of council members to actually look at what that said department would do and come back with a proposal for it before I make it a priority. But I do think that, I think that one of the things we should do is, like a few of us on this call and some of the people who are part of the ad hoc, maybe should roll up our sleeves and sort of work on putting a little bit more meat on the bones, because I think some of the areas there were some really great specific proposals, and then some of the other areas, I think there's ideas, but I wanted to dig into those more and come back with a proposal. So to recap my feedback, absolutely on the hiring, that seems like it's the low-hanging fruit, is, publicizing things in certain places and hiring a recruiter that's an expert. And then my next priority, if I were to say it, would be really defining what we're measuring and then getting the data and coming back with a data report. So that's my thoughts on diversity and hiring.
Thank you for that. And before I go to Councilmember Fisher, I just want a clarification on what we're measuring, what do we want to measure? In the second to the last bullet in the diversity in city hiring is set DEI metrics and assess periodically. And I thought I heard our city manager say that we have already undertaken that.
We have, but
started that?
We started it, yes.
Okay, so I think that is, DEI is the whole purpose of this ad hoc committee. And so that's my understanding in how we went into this, and having followed it through its meetings, that has been the focus of this group. So that is what I think we are looking at measuring. And it would seem to me that, I'll save the rest of my comments until after Councilmember Fisher mentions, but I just wanted to throw that in because I thought that was something that we already were, I already have a check on that one on the list of things we're moving on.
I guess it's the data. I mean, you can define data and the scope of it and the sources of it, and a report could, are we looking back 5 years? Are we looking back 10 years? Are we taking it from today? There's just a lot that goes into sort of developing a data architecture that will give us good information on where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go. So that's I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions I have with respect to what a data report would include.
Okay, thank you. You're done for now? Okay, so Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. Well, I would suggest that the most important thing on this list for me is the Civilian Oversight Committee. And I know that the group mentioned a number of committees sort of for each one of their ideas, but that to me would be priority, and that it just be civilians and not staff. And that we then establish a commission, much like we established the Climate Commission 2 years ago. I think that was very effective in working on that issue and bringing it forward at the city. And so I would like to see us establish a commission. I would have liked to see more details about that come out from the homework. I think Eric Leyland was the other one that, well, maybe Zaira too, mentioned who should be on that, but make sure that we do have experts and people from the community who will help us with that commission, and that commission look at all of these recommendations and help us bring them forward. Again, much like the Climate Commission is doing. And then the third for me would be the Multicultural Center. And not to say that it's really 1, 2, 3, but there was a comment made by Claudia, again, in the homework that said, Lucchese Center and using Parks and Rec staff may not be appropriate because of the lack of diversity there. So I don't know how the city would be tied into that. And again, if we had a commission, then they could be grappling with these issues. What would the venue be? Would it be a 501c3? Would it be partnered with the city? Which department of the city? Those sort of detailed questions. I think that's what I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a clarification point on that? When you're talking about the Civilian Oversight Committee, that's separate and apart from a commission?
Absolutely, because they're two very different roles I see. I would say establishing a commission to essentially continue the work that this ad hoc has done and provide a place for people to come and talk about the issues. And for that commission to, again, you know, help advise us on this topic. So that would be different than civilian oversight. Civilian oversight committee, to me, and perhaps some of the members could speak to this, but it's really about what is our police department doing and how do we hold them accountable? I guess, how do we have different oversight? Because, you know we come from a society where police, you know, have a history, and it's not necessarily to protect the public. It has a long history. And so we just want to make sure that our police are operating in a fashion that's appropriate for our community.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because I actually did miss that. And I thought I only was counting two, but commission and the oversight committee. Okay, and I'm not sure if our vice mayor has his hand up again or just left it up. You got it up again?
I mean, so I'm just wondering, what's the structure? Are we going through this? Because I thought, I started on diversity in city hiring, but are we going through each one of those things individually? Or are we?
No, we said in the beginning that if you have anything to say about any of the issues, please bring it up now, and then we'll go, we'll go around, and then if once we're done there, then we can come back to issues once we hear from the public.
Then yes, I do have my hand up again.
Okay, that's all right. That's perfectly good. A lot of bites. Yep. This is the workshop.
Yeah, apologies for the for misunderstanding. So a couple of thoughts here. Absolutely would love to work with the schools more. I think the recommendations in there are great. I'm wondering what our role is in getting that, other than being a partner. I'd like to create more joint task force with the school and do more work. Obviously, I'm a big fan of safe routes to school, and I think that's just the start. But evidenced by just some of the things that we see, we have to get to people young, and we have to open their eyes and educate them. And I think that working with the schools is really important. So I'm all for creating a commission or a committee, whichever one would it be, to sort of work on implementing these, maybe even more than an ad hoc committee, if we just create a separate committee or commission. But I worry about increasing the bandwidth. I sit on certain committees where there's 5 people in the audience and 15 people as panelists or more. And so if we're going to create a new committee on DEI or something, maybe we can merge the PBAC and transit committee into a mobility committee. I've long thought that is a better way to just sort of recognize that it's a transportation system and everything is interconnected. And maybe that would free up some staff time to actually to put towards this and whatnot. So that's my thought about if we're going to create a commission. Let's also think about maybe merging a couple of commissions so that we don't just add more meetings for. With respect to, I think the Multicultural Center, my feedback's the same as the schools, and is that we need more proposals. I think there's good things in there, but we need like a task force or something that actually makes those things come to life. There needs to be creating a center like that. There needs to be staff, whether it's volunteer or paid. And so that, I'm all for it. I feel like it's something we need to think critically about in terms of how it actually manifests and operates and things like that. On the policing in the community, I do support independent civilian oversight of the police department. I think that the recommendations in there are great. I have a couple of questions on this. You know, there's definitely some great specific proposals that were provided by the committee. I'm wondering if there's a possibility that we can contract with a group like IOLERO or something like that to not create the wheel, but rather leverage the existing infrastructure that's being put in place and is funded. And so I don't know if that's possible, but I'd be interested to hear if that is. I want to continue to plug as we think about the things that we're tracking and making recommendations on. I really appreciated the point in there, humanize the police and the community. I had one conversation that just continues to resonate with me with a police officer's wife, and she really just brought up the mental health issues that police officers face. And so if we're going to be tracking things like anti-bias, de-escalation training, use of weapons, things like that, I'd also add in the prevalence of accessing mental health resources, promotion of mental health resources, and just making sure that we're doing whatever we can to make sure that our officers are, we're doing right by the officers to make sure that we're helping them to process the trauma that they endure on a daily basis as well. But I support that as well. So I think I've given now what I would say my priorities are. I support independent oversight as a priority coming out of the policing the community. I've said what I said about diversity and hiring. And then with respect to schools in the community center, I think a committee or a commission makes good sense to start bringing forward proposals and assessing ways that we can manifest the vision that's in there. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. So I'll weigh in right now, and I will say that you know, the motivation for me to sign on to the president's, the mayor's pledge by the Obama Foundation wasn't because I thought our police were out of control. It was because I think our police and our community really need to be better. And I think what we have come to in this year and a half practically since that happened has been the realization that we all do want to be better. We just have to learn how to do that. And many of us have taken steps to that end. I think the idea of civilian oversight of the police is something that we should adopt. And I think this is an excellent time to do that because we're not in a crisis situation. This is a time when we can install a new community group where we are looking at the police as a group of the city that wants to be better and wants to be in, you know, like our vice mayor just said, you know, there's pain and suffering on the police department as well. You know, we want everybody to realize that, you know, you see it in yourself, see it in others. And this is a really good way, I think, to do that when there aren't high tensions, when the tendency toward political theater is low. And so you actually will be bringing in people who don't have an axe to grind, but have a goal that they want to reach to make their community better. So I really think this is the time to do this. And you know, we all want to be better. I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't want to be better. And which doesn't mean we're bad. It just means that we can always be better. So that is definitely my #1 goal. And you know, and how that happens though is something that we need to know. And I believe it was the vice mayor who said he didn't want us to reinvent the wheel. We do need to look at models that are working that we can put in place here or just change a bit. Because if we have it outside of the council and outside of the staff, we need to know how is it regulated and how is it overseen. So all those questions need to be answered, and I think other communities have done it, so we can do that. From there, I do like the idea of a commission, but I also share the Vice Mayor's concerns about too many commissions and committees. And I really love your idea about looking at our committees and commissions and seeing what is a more useful way of perhaps merging and bringing them together and making them more effective and dealing with the problems as we are now trying to look at things more holistically. And so I'm not sure we need a commission on this, but I'm open to the idea of what value added would a commission be. But what I know our city, just from looking at our staff reports, I see now that when the staff report comes, it lists what this issue that we're dealing with, item, let's say 6B. How does it deal with our climate goals? How does it deal with our goals and priorities in general? How does it deal with our financial impacts? And now we're looking at it, is this something that has any impact on our being an age-friendly city? Well, we can also use the lens of DEI. How does this help us meet those goals? And, I find it very interesting because, when I'm reading through what we're buying for the Public Works Department, and no offense, Public Works Department, but, I'm not always thinking about, how that's going to affect DEI, but, maybe it will. So I really do want to just have that reinforced as I'm reading these staff reports and as we're going through our work as a council. So I'm not sure it needs a commission, and but I did want to respond to that since several people brought it up. I do think the school district, I think I agree with Mr. Healy on this, as no good deed goes unpunished, that if we're going to work with the school district, I think we need to do some very preliminary work of seeing if they want to work with us. And perhaps what we need to do is forward this report, or at least that section of the report, to the various school districts and see if some of them were on this this ad hoc committee, and they may be interested in continuing that work or looking at that work in their own boards. But I would like to hear back from them before suggesting how we go forward on that. And then the Multicultural Center, I like the idea of it. I just don't know what it looks like. And that is the one that is the most nebulous to me. And it's important. It's as important as the Civilian Oversight Committee, because it is where our community should be able to be drawn to. And so, how that looks, how it's set up, where it's positioned, how it's accessed, all those things I need a little bit more help on. So that's my only comment. And yes, I'm going to ask everybody if you have anything else more to say, then we'll go to public comment and then we'll come back. So, and staff also, or Tracy, if you want to say something after before we go to public comment, after Council Member Fisher speaks, that would be good.
I was going to comment on the idea of a commission, and that is a place where they can talk about a multicultural center and work through all those issues, and then bring that back to us as a council, and a number of the other recommendations and proposals in the committee. And perhaps somebody from the school board could actually sit on this commission as a way to integrate the schools with the city work. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I do think there are some, and our city attorney may know this, well, I'm sure he does know this much better than I do, that I'm not sure people from other boards can sit on other boards as electeds, but
well, we had them sitting on the ad hoc, so yeah, I don't know whether they could sit on
ad hoc is different.
Permanent, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Vice Mayor, Vice Mayor, and then we'll go to Tracy.
Yep. So I agree with Councilmember Fisher that if we don't have a committee of some sort, I don't see how we're going to get a proposal for the Multicultural Center. So again, I just want to plug that right now we have our transit, our PBAC, and an ad hoc of our PBAC and our transit. And each one of those requires staff time and preparation and staff reports and things. And it takes up days, limits the number of days we have for other meetings. To the point of working with the schools, I think this is such an opportunity, and I realize that I'm new and I'm sort of maybe disillusioned in thinking that we can make this happen. But in the work that I've done in trying to build bridges, it's not about working necessarily on the things that are even in this in the report from the ad hoc committee, but it's just reaching out and saying, we want to work together on things. What would you like to work together on? And starting with square one with what do they want to work together on? And then getting a win and showing, building this sort of operational fabric and the collaborative fabric so that we can expand to other things that we want to work on. But I think that it's super important that we start to build stronger relationships with our schools, not for today or tomorrow or next year, but for 20 years from now. We just, we need to be working together more effectively. So yeah, that's all I have on that stuff.
Thank you. I see our city managers raised your hand. Do you want to speak before Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
And thank you, Tracy. Vice Mayor Barnacle, I just want to let you know we have started working with our schools. We started conversation on emergency preparedness, how we can better prepare and do more tabletop exercises and just better preparation. And, even in this ad hoc work, reaching out to each one of the school districts to make sure that they had somebody on that was participating. So I will be circling back. And as a matter of fact, even Petaluma City Schools had reached out and, as they're doing their districting process, I think there's a lot of parallels and there's a lot of opportunities as you recognize for us to work together. So we're not letting those opportunities go by.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to our consultant on this issue, Tracy Webb.
Yeah, I don't have much because I really want to hear public comment. I mean, I think that's what we need to hear their thoughts. I think that the questions that the council is asking are good ones. The direction that you all are moving in, which is let's establish some concrete means to move forward, right? I think this is what the ad hoc committee really wanted to hear and wants to see implemented. So I don't have anything other than that right now. I turn it back to you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be here the whole time. So.
Okay, thank you very much. So right now we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone in the public who'd like to speak on this item. And I just want the public to know there's 37 people from the public in attendance at this workshop. So can I go to our moderator to see if there's anyone in the public who'd like to speak? Oh, I should really ask our Deputy City Clerk if she's received any items on this issue.
We've received one public comment, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll go to the moderator.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those wishing to participate in public comment must raise their virtual hand and wait to be called on by the moderator. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you're invited to do so. This first speaker that we have is Katherine Wells, followed by Zyra. Katherine, I will now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I also want to thank City Council for your thoughtful questions and concerns regarding all the work that the committee did. I was on the ad hoc committee representing the Chamber of Commerce. And so there was just a couple things I wanted to comment on. First, I wanted to thank Deputy Mayor Barnacle, and I think somebody else for their comments regarding mental health of their police officers. So the Oversight Committee and that whole conversation regarding the community relationship with police. I just wanted to thank Mr. Barnacle for mentioning that. I think it's really important. Secondly, I wanted to clarify a couple of things. Regarding the Multicultural Center, I believe in the homework there was someone that suggested, and I think we all kind of like the idea of creating a 501c3 that would oversee that, so it wouldn't necessarily require a bunch of staff time, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that point. And I also wanted to clarify that our committee was pretty vague about who and how we wanted to create the Police Oversight Committee. We believed that it was better for council or whomever they chose to be more specific about those members and how they chose them and who made up that committee. So we left it kind of vague. So I wanted to just clarify that point. And the last thing I wanted to say, clarification again, is as far as the Oversight Committee, Policing Oversight Committee, I do think having a member of staff, although I know they're very overworked already, but having a member of city staff available just to answer questions and clarify any points that come up could be helpful as the committee met and discussed issues. So those were just a couple of things I wanted to mention and clarify. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everything that you're doing with this work.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have is Zyra, followed by a phone number. Zyra, I'll allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hey everyone, good evening. I just first of all want to appreciate Tracy Webb's report. It was amazing, and again, I appreciate you guiding our ad hoc committee as well as continuing your work to guide the city. You know, it's actually news to us, and I think most of us, that the city is continuing unconscious bias trainings. I think it would be a great idea for even the community to know who the HR director is, right? That's also creating and building trust and transparency, and so that we're all connected and we're understanding who's, you know, part of our community and part of the city. I do want to appreciate council members' ideas that have been bouncing back and forth. This is exactly what the ad hoc committee wanted, you know, and I think Tracy Webb said it best, these are blueprints. You all have done, and honestly, I'm amazed of this conversation. It was very positive. It gave some sense of hope, and I hope that others in the community regain that hope. Just because, you know, as we've seen in Sonoma County as a whole, just because you create an advisory committee with diverse backgrounds, it doesn't necessarily mean that those power players will implement any of the work that they put into. I am in total support with the civilian oversight. I think that's very much needed to build trust. And I'm also in support of creating a commission, though I echo Vice Mayor Barnacle's sentiments. Even within the community organizing, we're all burnt out, you know, staff is burnt out. And if you all want to check out what UC Davis is doing for their police oversight, that's something that you can look at. You also have former director Jerry Threet that you can reach out to. You know, you have resources here in Sonoma County, just like Iolero. And secondly, something that might help to diversify commissions and boards is if you check out what San Francisco has done, which allows non-citizens to vote in their school board elections. I think language is very powerful. Maybe take a revisit in your city charters does that prohibit non-citizens, like for example, permanent resident, folks who are green card holders, are they allowed to, sit on commissions and boards? It's just revisiting your city charter, I think is also something to look at. And, but yeah, I appreciate y'all's time and effort into this and looking forward to what's the outcomes are. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have is a phone-in number. The number ends with a 0694. I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Mayor Barrett, members of the City Council, my name's Jim Duffy. I want to start by thanking you so much for what appears to be universal support on your council for establishing some form of civilian oversight with the Petaluma Police Department. I'm calling to you this evening from Tucson, Arizona, where I am attending the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, also known as NACOL, their annual conference, which appropriately for your meeting tonight is titled or themed this year, Civilian Oversight as a Permanent Part of Public Safety. Because in 2015, President Obama's task force recommended that all law enforcement agencies have civilian oversight. Councilmember Fisher talked about wanting details of the oversight office that you would have. And the way that you'll be able to get that is you need to work with a certified practitioner of oversight as you develop the ordinance that you're going to have to create to establish your oversight office. There's hundreds of oversight agencies in the United States, and no two are alike. One way of looking at oversight is 4 basic models that run anywhere from the investigative model, which is very staff heavy and more expensive, to a review model, which is mostly volunteers and much less expensive, with the auditor monitor model in the middle, which is what IOLERO is, but IOLERO now has some investigative after Measure P. And then there's hybrids. Another way of looking at oversight is front-end oversight versus back-end oversight. I don't live in Petaluma, but my children are proud graduates of Petaluma High School. I love the city. And based on all the years I've spent with families in Petaluma, I really think that your model that you're going to wind up getting is more of a front-end oversight, where you're going to be talking about how you're policed with the police, rather than worrying about reviewing critical incidents after they happen. Your model is going to have to address the 13 principles of effective oversight, which time doesn't allow me to go into this evening. But again, this is why you should be working with a certified practitioner when you create this ordinance. There's a reason that those of us that are certified take 2 to 3 years to get the certification, because it's not that obvious to folks. Thank you very much for taking my comments, and thank you for supporting civilian oversight.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have is Janice Cater-Thompson, followed by Frauke. Janice, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated Mr. Duffy's comments. It was really good information for the public, but also for the city council. I just want to say, as some of you know, I do a radio show on Friday called Inside Petaluma. And this last Friday, Matthew Harris, the superintendent of the Petaluma City Schools, was on, along with Tony Howe, who's the assistant superintendent and also educational services. And I really think that they are ready to work with the city. I know from the conversation that they're already talking to the feeder schools about, unconscious bias. And so I think it's just a great opportunity. It's not the old time when the city and the schools were very separated. This is one opportunity and topic that I think will work very well together. And I just wanted to let you know that, and that's it. And I think that Tracy's presentation or report was very clear, and I appreciated that it was quick. It was packed with great information, and I just thank the council for their discussion tonight and looking forward to seeing this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that we have is Fraka, followed by Lou. Fraka, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so excited to be part of this, and I'm listening to, everything that you're bringing. And I would, and I have in the past also offered my my help in the police department as far as the better oversight and also how to deal with mental health. I lost a son 2.25 years ago, like 27 months ago, unfortunately. And I do want to be involved because I believe I have a voice and I have gained enough understanding in 13 years of mental health and dealing with the police department, good and bad. And I have not had much response at all. And I also would like to offer my help, to any one of the committee members here. I believe that I have valuable information. I have contacted 2 years ago or so, 1.5 years ago, I contacted Cahoots in Oregon, trying to get them here to California, because I felt that we needed more help with not just the police department, but also people that really do understand mental health and the difference between criminal and mental health. There's a huge difference. And I'm saddened. I have not had any response from applying for volunteer positions, for jobs on a Petaluma website, and also to offer my volunteer help with the police department in this specific manner. So here I am. I'm going to put it out to everyone. So I hope that many people hear me. I continue get, people, my friends, my family, I've lived in Petaluma forever. They always encourage me to get involved. And so here I am. I want to get involved. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I know that mental health and it's not an easy chapter. But mental health people are also, they're not criminals. So anyway, I'm here. Thank you so much for your work. And I hope I get some sort of response. Thank you so much.
Next speaker that we have is Lou, followed by Eric. Lou, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Lou Zweier. Was a member of the ad hoc committee representing the Petaluma Community Relations Council. And I want to thank Tracy for her work and all the other members of the committee for their work. I want to thank the council members tonight for, what in my judgment is a really thoughtful discussion and exploration of the things that came out of the committee. I'm really encouraged to hear, what people are thinking and what the kinds of things that they're wanting to support. I also was really encouraged to hear the talk about measures, about wanting to develop measures of of the different things we're going to try to do. How are we going to measure it? And that we would measure it and let the public know about how it's going. I think that's really important. And so I was really encouraged to hear that being talked about, because if you don't measure something, you can't know if you're making progress or not. So I think that's really important. I also think that study is going to be needed to figure out how to do some of these things. And what the gentleman that talked about the different ways of doing police oversight, one of the reasons I was vague when I did my proposal on that is because the first thing I said was we need to study models of police oversight, because I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to do it. And that's true with many of the things that were ideas that were proposed was, it's going to take some study to figure out how to do these things. It's very easy to say it. It's very hard to do it and do it well. And on that note, also, I would support Tracy's recommendation to not to try to do too much, because these things are hard to do. And I also think having a commission, an ongoing commission to kind of continue the work of the committee, I think that's a good idea. That's probably a good way to get things done. Yeah, and I think the other thing I'd like to echo is just about informing the community. I think a lot of the times the city works really hard to do stuff, and one of the things that builds trust with the community is that when the community gives feedback or something or asks for something, that the community finds out about what's happening with that. So I think that's really important piece, which actually I think the city does a really good job of communicating, and just continue to do that in this area too. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. Running the city is a really hard job, and I'm grateful for all of you that are there doing that for us. Thank you.
The next speaker you have is Eric, followed by Susan. Eric, I'll now allow you to speak. You can mute yourself in the end.
Thank you very much. I'll try to keep this short, but I just wanted to thank Tracy and for facilitating. It was awesome and quite hard work. I do facilitations on topics not nearly as hard, so it's very impressive. And the council for supporting this along the way. I just want to put in a plug for the independent civilian oversight of policing. And the thing that I learned in this conversation was the thrust that the group came from was really, not only accountability, but it was restorative and partnership. Like the whole point was that we really need to work together as a community with a strong body of citizens, working together with policing to really not only daylight some of the problems and see them for what they are, but to handle them in a collaborative way. So I thought that was a really impressive approach, and it gets away from a lot of the media spin on what's really going on with oversight. I also want to double underscore the recommendation for a permanent commission on race relations of public safety. I think the whole point, if you look at these slides, the 5 topics, I think I counted, if I got it right, like 29 items. And the group was, it was very difficult, as you're finding, to choose among all of these. And yeah, we do have to prioritize, but it would be really nice to have some power behind that prioritization. Folks that can really sort of manage the metrics portion of this. Where are we starting? Are we improving or not? And then over time, being able to roll forward with more and more of these recommendations to get these done. So I really think I can't imagine how this group, this council, and can do a really good job without an extra body like that, given all the work that we're doing already on so many important topics. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The next speaker that we have is Susan, followed by Alcina. Susan, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you. Susan Kirks, and I would like to express appreciation to the members of the ad hoc committee. I had the opportunity to attend all meetings of the committee, and I deeply respect the experiences that were expressed and also the risks that some of the committee members took to participate in this process in a city like Petaluma, and also with the city government that we have. I want to encourage the elected officials, the city council members and the mayor, to continue to hold a very significant space for the members of this ad hoc committee, and I fully support continuation of the work they have started. The committee members are the experts on the topics that they identified and discussed. And I also agree that the Civilian Oversight Committee of our police department is an action that the council could move forward with first and expediently getting that into place and then moving forward with other topics that are of importance. I heard consistently throughout the committee meetings that this was a priority for the committee members, for our community. And as we plan to move forward to become a more compassionate city, understanding the racism that underlies the community here, it's very important to take some action and to honor the committee's recommendations. And I also agree that a body, a form of a commission or committee to help this ad hoc committee's work continue is very important. I also attended a student-led seminar on racism sponsored by the high schools, and that also confirmed the experience of rampant racism within our city schools. And I agree that a relationship and working together to address that is very important. But mostly, I just wanted to say tonight how much I appreciate all of the committee members and their work. It's very important. Thank you.
The next speaker they have is Alcina, followed by John. Alcina, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening. I'm Alcina Horseman, and I'm actually calling from Santa Rosa. There are a few of us that are tracking the oversight issues all over the county, because really the law enforcement anywhere in the county, whether it's police departments or the sheriff's department, really affect everyone living in the county. So I won't take up too much time, but this was a really inspiring, wonderful meeting. I thought Ms. Webb's report was absolutely fantastic. And I just want to put in a plug for civilian oversight. Everything that Jim Duffy said, I second it. There are a lot of us that are really paying attention to these issues, really all over the country, but really in our county, we can do so much better. And we're slowly getting there. Thank you so much for your work. I can see the rest of my time. Thanks a lot.
Next speaker that we have is John, followed by Ellen. John, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all the committee members who did all their hard work and took the time from their very busy schedule to do all that. I think the Oversight Committee is very, very, very important, and that's something you need to act up on immediately. You don't need fund for that. You can appoint the committee just like you appointed every other committee, and I think we have like 13 committee in Petaluma. The few things I'd like to point out to you, you cannot have a police department that cannot police themselves. And that seemed to be a real problem here in Petaluma. One of you mentioned that the police department have a history. Well, they have a real bad history, especially under the current administration. I know Ken is listening. Ken Savano have a lot of good things about him, and he have done a lot of good things to the community. I will never take that away from him. But he also have a lot of bad things about him, okay? And that's something that you guys never recognize, nor you're willing to recognize. It is not fair for some of the police officers in our community who get painted in the same paintbrush because somebody had a negative experience with one of the police officers. And when it comes to the mental issue, police job is very, very stressful. They deal with all kinds of people. And they need to get the credit they deserve. I know I'm very critical at times, or most of the time, of some of the policies and procedure that takes place, but I will never take away from the good stuff that they do. One of the things I pointed out to you, and you guys never recognized it. Why is it that I was lied about the police officer who assaulted the black woman when I asked if he's still on duty? And I was lied to by your city attorney also in writing. So you guys need to take that into consideration and be transparent to the community. So, you know, Tracy mentioned about the pledge from the mayor. Well, where was the mayor when this was kept hush-hush for 15 months until, you know, Ken Savano put the word out just recently that he was on administrative leave back in October. No, in July, when I asked about it in writing, and I asked the deputy chief into his face, and he lied to me. Thank you, and I hope you guys do the oversight committee immediately.
The next speaker we have is Ellen. Ellen, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi there. First, I want to again thank the members of the ad hoc committee and Tracy and the city for making this happen. The ad hoc committee's work was made exponentially harder from mistakes that were not of their making. So what they managed to accomplish was really extraordinary. It would have been anyway, but it was just extraordinary. Seems like the council is in favor of most of the recommendations or all of the recommendations, and that's a fabulous thing. But thinking about the entire process that led us here, I hope the council will prioritize the police oversight and the diversity in city hiring and appointments. About the civilian oversight, yes, it's going to be tough and there's a lot of different models, et cetera, but there's a lot of resources to tap into. And I trust that the city will do that and find the best model. I also hope though, and this is actually about like everything, that when the city does move forward on the steps, that it takes into account the diversity of the ad hoc committee and the intentionality of making the ad hoc committee very diverse. Because getting a bunch of white people to do police oversight, or getting a bunch of white people to do a commission, or getting a bunch of white people to do anything is just kind of maybe be a loop. And it's not, you know, it's just our demographics or our city are such that it is, and we don't want to put too much, we don't want to burden BIPOC, our BIPOC community members. So I hope that when we do set up these commissions that go forward or committees that go forward or any kind of oversight, that we pay people, because people need to be paid for their time and expertise. Regarding this appointing of a commission to like kind of say, okay, now the city wants to do all these things, go ahead and do it. That comment comes into play even more so. Because again, city demographics, if we have a bunch of white people saying, okay, how are we going to implement all of these amazing recommendations of a very diverse group of community members with lived experience of dealing with the community and dealing with police, then I fear that we're going to end up taking steps back from getting where we all need to be. So just thank you for listening to me, and I hope that it's something that we consider going forward. And thank you for your time.
The next speaker they have is Joanna. Joanna, I'll now allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and begin.
Hi, this is Joanna Pond calling in. I really appreciated being a member of the committee. And Tracy, thank you so much for just synthesizing everything that we said and condensing it down and making it really palatable. I do have to say that I am taking offense with the many comments about the schools reaching out to the city. Just by the nature of the committee, we had members from Old Adobe, Petaluma City Schools, WA, and I think that right there shows an effort on the school's part to reach out to the city. However, we're not really seeing the same. I can only speak on my own behalf. I know Dennis Posake has reached out to me to come tour our schools, and we've had many conversations about how the city can work with our schools. But I do have to say that we have taken that first step, and we would love to see that reciprocated. And I'll see the rest of my time.
And Madam Mayor, that's the last speaker with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council. Or if I don't know if staff wants to respond, or if Tracy would like to respond to anything that the public said at this point.
No, other than thank them for their participation. I'm curious to hear if staff has anything to add at this point, and then I would love to hear council's questions and deliberation.
Oh, same here. Really appreciate the feedback.
Okay, thank you. So now it's back to us, and I guess what we're looking to do is take the advice of our well, the person who led this whole discussion about keeping our what we select as our priorities to a small number, and looking at what we do that has the greatest impact, and considering equity and determining what those 3 to 5 priorities will be. So, does anyone want to lead this? If not, I am happy to start off. I think I'm not seeing any hands, so I am going to start off. I do think that the civilian oversight is really important and really is my first priority. From the conversation that our council members have had and the input from the public who spoke tonight, I've changed my mind on the commission issue. And I do think it is a good idea. And so that becomes my second priority, because I think Council Member Fisher made the parallel with the climate emergency group. And I do think if we are able to tap some of the people who, well, we obviously will leave it open to people to apply, but if people who also were on the ad hoc committee feel they want to do more, that's a very knowledgeable and, from my perspective, advanced group that would be good candidates for that commission. So those two, and the other reason why I'm interested in that is because I really liked the idea that Councilmember Fisher had about those people shaping where we, how we fill in or flesh out the other recommendations that were made, that people from the ad hoc committee who spoke today said that they either left vague purposefully or necessarily left vague. So I think that those two are my first and second priorities, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I will go with Councilmember Fisher, Councilmember Posake, and Councilmember King.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Well, I think I already voiced my 3 priorities, which was the oversight, the new commission, and the Multicultural Center, which again, I think could become a project of the commission. And I think in terms of hiring, you know, it seems like city staff has a good handle on that. So I don't know that we need to say anything more about that. And again, I haven't thanked the ad hoc committee members for doing all the work that they did. And so I'd like to let you know how grateful I am. And I found the meetings incredibly informative. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Posake.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am further convinced at this point after the public comment that the number one thing has to be civilian oversight. One thing I would like to mention, and I'm not sure if people were clear on this or if I understood what others have said, but I've had several conversations with consultants regarding civilian oversight in the last few weeks. And 3 times I have brought up to them a suggestion similar to some of what we've heard tonight, that perhaps we could have one committee or commission which deals with more than one of these problems. and they have all been as clear as they could be that any commission or committee that's going to deal with setting up civilian oversight, that should be their only charge because of the complexity of it. And I'm not even sure from what I've heard tonight that the ad hoc members wouldn't suggest going straight to a consultant in this regard. Not that this consultant would work on their own. I've read some consultant reports as well in which they do a lot of outreach and engagement of the citizens they're working with. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. And perhaps I'll utilize, unless forced to do differently, based on what was done as part of the ad hoc committee, where some folks voted all three of their votes for one item. I like to place all three of mine for citizen oversight, although I'm in favor of everything else on that list. Thank you.
Okay, so we're learning on the job here. Councilmember King.
Well, thank you. I said Dennis has moved to the Chicago style of voting, so I can appreciate that. Here's what I'm thinking, and this is after hearing again from the public, and I spoke fairly early in the council comments, is I see a DEI commission that could deal with all of the issues that have come up as an effort to move them forward, that all the issues that are in the report, that is. And that would include moving toward an establishment of an police oversight commission or committee as well. One of the things we heard, and I think on some level we knew this, but I don't think we know it with the specificity, is that we need to kind of determine what type of oversight and what the charge is going to be. We heard a range of things tonight from the council, from the public in the report. But I think that if we established the DEI commission and gave them as a first task to start working on oversight, we could accomplish both in a relatively reasonable period of time. On that same measure, I want to support what Councilmember Barnacle said about mental health for policing. I think he and I have talked to the same person, if I'm reading the lines correctly here. And I think it's a very important point to make as well. It's not a point I made my first go around, but I do want to also join in on that. The second point or priority is the diversity in city hiring and on the commissions. I think on the hiring part, the part of the report, all of the report was eye-opening in many ways in some respects, but one of them that was very clear, and it's almost something that you take for granted, but you read it in the report and it comes home a little harder, is that what you see among the people you're with and who you see doing the work is important. And the diversity and the level of diversity in that is important. So I really want to emphasize, my second priority would be to work on that subject. And I do think at a minimum, a consultant on DEI being retained by the city in the next year, with earlier in the year, to move some of that forward would be helpful. I think there's a level of expertise that's needed on the subject. There's a lot of subtleties involved in hiring that go overlooked, and I think it's a chance for everybody to have someone there to focus solely on that. And while that may not really impact the commissions or committees, I think that's more a job of public outreach and council decision-making over the coming years. I do think that diversity in city hiring, which a lot has been done, but making it a focal point of one of the takeaways from the report, I think is important. So if I was listing those, I know it's actually 2-ish, because we're talking oversight and a DEI or a commission. I see them as not being the same body, but something's got to be determined as to what the oversight's going to do. And I think starting with a citizen commission is the way to go. Is the way to go with that. I appreciate all the comments from the public speakers tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the next hand up is Tracy.
I will yield my time if any of the other council members want to speak before I do.
Okay.
Do you want to let the vice mayor go first? I think his hand's up.
I sure do. Okay.
Okay. Vice mayor? Oh, he didn't want it. Okay. Yeah.
Do you want me to go before you? I was
yes,
just
yes,
putting my
I do
hand
want
up.
you to go first.
Okay, sure. So my first priority would be oversight. My only concern is something to what Councilmember King said, is that I just want to make sure that what we come back with is alternatives and not like one proposal, but I'd rather, if we're going to bring back a proposal for oversight, I'd like to understand the different alternatives, that maybe having Mr. Duffy come in and just do a presentation at an upcoming council member meeting on what the different alternatives are, so that we can give more feedback into the actual creation of the oversight committee. That might be a good way to go about it, because I really don't know which model, and I don't think we're giving enough discretion or direction right now to come back with that. My second priority is just sort of the nuts and bolts hiring best practices, because it seems like it's so right now with the amount of hiring that we're trying to do following, the Measure U funding. So that's my second. And then the third one is forming a commission. And I'll let the commission determine what their priorities should be, whether it's, metrics and tracking, a multicultural center, school projects, things like that. But in creating the commission, I'd really like to have us come back and think about if we can merge other commissions in addition, in parallel with creating a new commission, so that to the extent we can, we're not, we're minimizing the incremental workload that we're putting on our staff. That's my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. So I think my thoughts are similar to what I've been hearing. In terms of a top priority, I think the low-hanging fruit is really in the diversity and city hiring category. And I think we're doing a lot of those things now, but I think we should memorialize those and formalize those. And then I think it might make sense to move forward with a diversity commission first to work our way into the civilian oversight issue, because as been mentioned, there are numerous different models out there for civilian oversight, and we really haven't delved into the weeds on that as to what might be most appropriate for this community. I think that starting with the commission and working in that direction might make sense for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. I think we've heard a lot of good ideas from the group and from the council tonight, and so many ambitious plans. And I think an awful lot of hard work's been done, and what remains is an awful lot of hard work. And so I like the idea of a commission digging in to get after all that hard work. The devil's in the details. Titles and things like that aren't what's important. What's important is what the finished product is. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay, so before I go to Tracy, I'm just going to float something by council members Fisher, Posake, and the vice mayor. what do you think of the idea that this commission that we set up be the one that actually start looking at how what type of oversight committee we should have, do the work with a consultant or with staff? I don't know how that's done. That's to be determined. But that is the group that does that research before we go to, or do you want that committee, that oversight committee set up by the council itself? Okay, Vice Mayor.
The inclusive person in me says that I want to create a commission and then have them do it. And the person and the get stuff done person in me says that let's move forward with it in advance of creating a commission. And if along the way the commission determines that we need to modify the charter of the committee, they can do that. But it feels like, there was pretty loud and clear that was the first choice coming out of the ad hoc. And so it feels like we should, move forward with that, with some form of that. And that's why I think getting a presentation on the different alternatives from an expert and giving direction to staff about which one we'd like them to come back with on a proposal would be potentially a way to make sure that, we're getting some public input on, on the model that we're moving forward with, but also moving forward quickly.
Thank you. Councilmember Posake and then Councilmember Fisher.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm sort of in agreement with the Vice Mayor on that, about bringing that to council to give direction but also listen to citizens on the way. I mean, and I don't think anyone said this, but I am concerned that this more ongoing commission ought to be closer to the number that Tracy initially suggested for the ad hoc than what it's not that I want to kick off folks on the ad hoc, but I think for this, it should be a smaller commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Fisher?
I just want to agree with that statement. I think it could even be a commission of 5. I don't even think we need to go to 7 and get some real work done. I think both and maybe is my answer. So, we have, as was mentioned, Jerry Threet in our community who's had lots of experience. And so I think we should be doing both at the same time. We should be establishing, or at least thinking about what this oversight committee looks like, as well as creating then the structure for the commission and opening that up for applications. And then, depending on what the timing works, perhaps that's the first thing that they hear. But we should be doing them in tandem.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping to get a little bit more cohesiveness there, but it didn't seem to come. So no. We'll just, we've all weighed in on this, so let's go to Tracy Webb.
Thank you. So after listening to the council deliberate and to public comment and then and reflecting back over the last year, my sort of distillation of all of this is that the city really can benefit from an expert regarding civilian oversight of the police. It's so complex. And I think, Mr. Duffy brought up some excellent points. I didn't even realize there was this association where he's with whom he's meeting right now. So bring in an expert to at least give some options in terms of what's out there in the universe and what might work well with the city, and also engage some of the community members, particularly those that were on the ad hoc committee in that discussion. The second is regarding diversity in city hiring. The idea of creation of the Office of Equity is a brilliant idea, because the buck stops with that person, and it is that person's job to ensure that the DEI practices in the city and policies go forward. I think that's very important. I spent many years in corporate America before I started my firm 17 years ago. And the one thing I walked away with is that accountability makes or breaks initiatives. And I'm a little concerned about creating another commission to study, because it can go on forever. We've got to start getting things done. And if these initiatives are housed within certain departments and somebody owns it, that's accountability. The third on diversity in schools. Somebody brought this up. I don't know if it was the council member or somebody in the public, I don't remember, but they had a brilliant idea. Take the list that the ad hoc committee came up with in this category, diversity in schools, share it with all of the superintendents or school boards in the various districts, get their feedback about where they'd like the city's partnership. Let them weigh in on that. And then lastly, on the Multicultural Center, this notion of creating an exploratory committee or something that looks at setting it up as a 501c3, because there's so many benefits to that, particularly in California, and then being able to having the city, give some assets in whatever form that is, a building or whatever it is. I'm just trying to put this into boxes that will actually yield results and have direct accountability. That's my input.
So let me ask you a question about those last 4 items. I think it was three or four. Four. This Office of Equity that you suggest, I'm just wondering how that, and maybe this is beyond the scope of your thinking here, how does that work so that it seems transparent to the community?
It would have to be set up in a way, Madam Mayor, that the community is invited in for conversation with this person on a regular basis, that their initiatives are public, which for the most part they can be, unless there's a personnel issue, right? That's an HR issue that can't be shared necessarily. But in lieu of that, you build transparency in by inviting the public in and sharing the findings. And that person could also hold, to Vice Mayor Barnacle's point earlier, the statistics. That person could be responsible. I say person, but I mean, they would have a staff or have other people that work with them. They would be responsible for gathering those statistics. And they can also be vetted with the public as well, because as we all know, those of us who study statistics, they can be manipulated 6 ways to Sunday. So you want other lenses on that process. So I just think that was an idea that did come out of the committee, the Office of Equity.
Okay, thank you for your response to that. And I see our city manager has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Tracy. I want to go back to, I appreciate everybody's feedback. There's many ways we can not only be accountable, but get things done. And I think staff has been very focused on making sure that we're teeing up this conversation for tonight over this past year. So my recommendation, we heard you loud and clear about what your priorities are, is coming back and talking about how to get this done, and giving council options. The one caveat to that is if we're going to set up a commission, we appoint people to our committees and commissions as of January. So maybe that would be, I could pull that out specifically and say, if we're going to set up a commission, I kind of like what Vice Mayor Barnacle has suggested is, I think we have 19 or 20 CCBs or committees and commissions in the city. And it would be good for us to, as staff, to figure out how we can either combine and make it more efficient, because many departments have multiple committees and commissions. And so if we could start to pull some together or find some efficiencies, we could set up another commission in January. So we could parse that out separately, but I would like to come back with recommendations based upon what we heard tonight from the council and the community, and talk about some options for implementation.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to go back to the council and to have you guys weigh in on what we just heard from both the city manager and from Ms. Webb, because I think that that Ms. Webb is suggesting something slightly different. than what I just heard from our just going down the line of what was our priorities. I think civilian oversight, I think that has a clear majority that is should be definitely one of the 3 to 5 things that we go forward on. What I'm not certain about is there seemed to be a very different view among the council members on a commission and how that should look and be set up. And then and the issue about DEI hiring and the consultant, which might not be very different from the idea of the Office of Equity, because in looking at those, you know, how we go forward with that, that might be what's comes out, distills out from that discussion. And I just want to make sure that the council's with me on that kind of thinking, or if they're thinking I'm way off guard, okay, I'm getting head nods, so that's somewhat good. And the Multicultural Center, you know, I think it's the issue that people feel the least, is the least concrete and needs more fleshing out. And so those are the 4 issues. And then reaching out to the schools. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't think we shouldn't reach out to the schools on the council. Now's your time to say it's you. But the idea of taking the ad hoc committee's 19 points and sending them to both the superintendents and their boards. I think both of those groups need to be involved. And then ask them to get back to us. I would recommend that would be a way, you know, something that we could do. But the Multicultural Committee, I just don't know how I don't know how to direct staff on that at this point. I need some assistance from other people about how you think we're gonna, if we're going to include that as one of our priorities, how are we gonna do that? Okay, I have 2 hands up, thank you both. Councilmember Fisher and Barnacle.
Well, again, I think if we're establishing a commission, then that becomes one of the items that commission will look at. And unless Peggy has something different, I think what we just heard from Peggy is that she heard us and that she would come back with how we get these things done.
And let me just interrupt or say what I did hear that from the city manager, but I also heard from Tracy. She did not mention the commission. She mentioned this Office of Equity, and that perhaps that would be the focus of where this kind of discussion and activity would happen. And part of that office's job would be community interaction. So that's a different approach.
Yeah, and if we're establishing a commission, then that's where the conversation takes place, right? That's the opportunity for people to weigh in. So
those are two different views here. Yeah. Okay, Vice Mayor Barnacle, and then Councilmember Healy, and then Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the maybe I'm struggling with the idea of creating an Office of Equity right out of the gate because again, I just feel like that needs to be defined. But I sort of bucketed some of the work ahead into like recruiting, really integrating into our existing operation, DEI, and then sort of new DEI initiatives. So that would be things like the Multicultural Center, creating a commission, diving into the data, that sort of thing. And maybe there was one of the recommendations was hiring equity first consultants. And one of the things that I'm concerned with is if we task staff with coming up with a charter for an equity commission or a DEI commission, that's additional work for them. And if we hire an equity consultant to figure out what the charter for our DEI commission would be, what the overview of the Office of Equity might be, we're bringing in an expert to figure out what those next wave of new initiatives are. I just am concerned that if we're asking staff to start bringing back proposals for these things, it's a lot of work. But if we hire a consultant, we can, get them in the door and make priorities based on, what they bring us.
Thank you. City Manager, did you want to speak now or did you want to wait?
I just want to thank you, Mayor. I was just going to address, staff was going to suggest an equity officer when we came back with our first course staffing recommendations, but because there was so many needs in the organization, we kind of had to jettison that at this point. But hearing the priorities here from council, we can bring back a recommendation of what that staffing cost would be. It's kind of, it's an ongoing cost, but it's somebody also, just like our climate action manager, who can champion something and work citywide to get that done. I could also be the liaison for the commission, can do a variety of things. So, there is a benefit, and our neighbor up to the north, I think Santa Rosa has that position. So there are cities, there are jurisdictions that have that position.
Thank you for that clarification. So Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember King, followed by Councilmember Posake.
Thank you. So I think there is some, as you've suggested, Madam Mayor, some ambiguity in our conversation, but there are just so many different moving parts and they're connected together in so many different ways. I guess my question to the city manager is there any more direction we can give you tonight that would help clarify your task? Because I think you've gotten a lot of feedback from us already tonight.
I think we're good on the direction that we got from council. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember King, and then Councilmember Posake, and then Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll start with the subject of DEI hiring consultant, either a consultant or employee. My suggestion on a consultant was that I think it would be quicker for getting started, but not prohibitive of hiring somebody in the long haul. I think we should leave it up to the staff to look at the money situation and which direction makes sense. But certainly having someone there permanently, I mean, Tracy mentioned an office of equity. I think the office is the person with an office, presumably, who will start out and be able to do the work that's needed internally and externally to the degree that they're given the charge. And I think having a professional on staff, and whether it turns out to be a consultant, because we've used consultants effectively in the city, and clearly, Peggy just gave the example of Patrick Carter, having a staff member has been used effectively as well. So I think either, but I think it really should come back from the staff at this point with the direction that has been received. And I've emphasized this multiple times in my speaking, so obviously I think this is important. But I think the sooner, I mean, you don't want to rush or be in a hurry, but you want to be quick. And I think either of those ways is the way to go. With regard to hiring an expert on civilian oversight of police to start out the process and give us as a council some options, since that appears to be the direction we're going to be heading on that subject, I think that's a good idea. I realize there's a cost associated with it, but I think it's a good idea because how we do this, deciding to do it is the first step, but how we do it is really the important step. and how it gets done. The third question you asked, Madam Mayor, is on the commission. What I think about a commission is there is a whole bunch of other things on this list that were recommended. There's nothing on here that I look at and go, oh, I can't support that. And certainly having a commission to set up things like, all right, if we're going to have a multicultural center, what are our options for actually doing it? Where can we have it? Who's going to run it? How it's going to be financed? How much citizen participation is going to be involved? I think that's where a commission on that subject could be helpful. And I agree. I think I've heard several members say, somebody mentioned, I think Council Member Fisher mentioned 5 commissioners if we have one. I'm in accord with that. That's about the amount of people we assign to a commission, normally 5 or 6, depending on the commission. And I think that's about the right size because I think things will get done. And while there's a level of exclusion, I suppose, but there's also a level of getting something done, which in the end is what I want to see us achieve. The last question is, I think, sending the report to the schools and all the people that were mentioned. Yeah, clearly. And then see where that goes. And having the commission work on something like that might be helpful if you have a commission to determine what can be done there. I hope that I wrote down what you asked about, Madam Mayor. I hope that answers, provides some insight on that.
I think you captured it. Thank you. Council Member Posake, followed by Council Member McDonald and Police Chief Savannah.
Thanks. I'm pretty well right on top of Councilmember King here. I think, that we ought to try to quickly but carefully get together a commission in January to deal with, kind of sorting all this out, and at the same time start to investigate a consultant for civilian oversight. And other than that, I'm want to defer the rest to the city in terms of to the staff in terms of coming up with suggestions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember McDonald.
I'm sensing a lot of commonality. Yeah, I'll be quick. I think the consultants will be on board quicker and help us make the first jump. And we'll obviously need a staffer as soon as possible. All these other tasks require long-term staffing. So yeah, I think consultant first and then bring in the staff.
Thank you. Police Chief Savannah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the council and the committee for your important work to bring us to this discussion tonight. I would be remiss to not address a couple of things that have been discussed tonight. And considering the mental health of your police department staff as has been talked about, I want to thank Mayor Barrett for your comments about understanding that support for oversight does not mean that our staff, specifically your police officers and support staff, have been bad. And in fact, our history shows we've been quite good and we want to remain there. That does not mean we do not want to be or cannot be better, because we do. And that has always been a part of our organization's culture. We do support and understand the importance of oversight to build even more trust and confidence. So much so that after the 2015 Task Force report on 21st century policing, one of the important pillars of that report was policy and oversight. And to that end, we engaged in oversight initiatives before anyone else in this county did. There are 4 models of oversight: the outside independent accreditation, such as CALIA, advisory review, independent auditor, and a legislative investigative body. In 2016, based on that task force report, we proactively enrolled our agency with the Commission on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies, known as CALIA. We embarked on a 3-year certification process, and we were not able to complete it due to a lack of resources, as most agencies have full-time staff dedicated to that process. That practice, or that accreditation, not only makes sure that we have the best practices in policing, but would have verified that we were in fact doing what we say we were doing. We look forward to researching and exploring all of these options to build an even higher level of trust and confidence with the community we serve. I am confident that staff can research this important item and bring back options for all of you to consider and do what Mr. Duffy suggested, which was choose an oversight model that is best for Petaluma. Again, thank you all for the discussion tonight. We appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Fisher.
I just want to say happy birthday to the police chief tomorrow.
Oh.
Okay, so I think I don't see any more hands up. I heard staff say they have a good idea about where we want them to look at this issue going forward. And so what we've really looked at this in terms of what's the most important and what brings the most equity and what is achievable. So can we also now look at what the time frame for moving forward would be? City Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. My recommendation is that staff would come back definitely before your committee and commission recruitments, appointments would go out to establish a commission, and also what our recommendations are to potentially consolidate some of the committees and commissions so we can free up some staff time. So I would say that we would be back in January with a process to get a commission up and running, and then we would follow suit with other recommendations regarding the priorities that you had set forth this evening.
Okay, thank you. That does seem very aggressive in terms of the timeline from my perspective.
Well, I would say that the commission would be in January. After that, I would say probably the first quarter in 2022 for the rest of the recommendations.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. Is everybody okay with that timeline? Anybody want to weigh in on anything about that, including Ms. Webb?
Yeah, I have a question, if I may.
Certainly.
A clarification. City Manager, when you say the commission, coming back with the commission vetting in January, do you mean the DEI commission, or are we talking about the oversight? Which one?
No, it's the DEI commission.
Okay, thank you.
And while I have everybody here and I have our Director of Human Resources, I wanted to introduce Charla Freckman. Charla joined us. It's been, gosh, I don't know, Charla, 1 month, 2 months? That she joined us, and she's hit the ground running. So wanted to introduce you.
Thank you, City Manager Peggy, and I just would like to tell Madam Mayor and the council members that I am absolutely delighted to be a part of this team. This position is a dream job for me. It's the capstone to my career. And the more and more I learn about the city as an organization, the more thrilled I am to be here. As the city manager will tell you, part of the discussion in my interview was around DEI. I'm really passionate about this work and about the work that Tracy is doing with our organization. I was the EEO officer in 2 prior positions. So this is really important work, and it's a passion that I have. And so I am looking very much forward to supporting the council in its goals and objectives as related to DEI and to serve Petaluma as a whole. I feel like I belong here. I feel like I am at the right place to do my very best work.
Well, I think I can speak for the council in saying we are happy to hear about your passion. We welcome you here, and we may not let you out of the building once you reopen. So there's a lot to be done, and you have a great team to work with. So thanks to everybody today, and again, thanks so much to the ad hoc committee members, and to Tracy Webb for leading that effort, and to our staff for supporting it, and to the council for voting it to happen. So with that, we will end our workshop, And we will see you next Monday for our regular city council meeting. So good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks.
Record.